Okay, right now taking a look at tonight's forecast discussion. We have 15% area for day 4, also 30% for day 5. Day 6 as well, we have another 15% over in Virginia and North Carolina. So for day 4, much of eastern Texas, Kansas going into much of that outside the Panhandle into much of Oklahoma going into central Texas, 15% area. We're a bit spread, about 30% they added, but I think it's now that guidance is. I think now the guidance has throughout the day. I think it's a bit more warranted than I thought in the morning, and 15% on day 6. I'm not surprised about that, as decent environment actually is for that. So, anyways, let's take a look at some soundings real quick. Take a look at some where we'll be monitoring moisture return. We do see some dew points in the upper 50s at the surface, and as well as tiny bits of moisturing are definitely in the low levels, although still loft is still really also some upper level clouds, pretty dry profile though, and that's basically the same story except without the upper level clouds. Still mid 50 dew points. I think by tomorrow we'll be seeing dew points maybe near in the upper 50s, low 60s. So that take a look at our take a look at some soundings out west. We'll take one from Albuquerque, and we'll take a look at one from Flagstaff. So in the low levels, we were seeing some pretty near dry adiabatic lapse rates. So that's gonna be pretty prime for a pretty strong EML. Basically same story. Again, near dry adiabatic. So yeah, we'll be seeing probably a pretty robust EML, especially on day 4. Will it be too robust? Don't think so. I think we'll be seeing some pretty good buoyancy nonetheless. So let's just take a look at some guidance. The name is turning in range, so we'll just take a look. We'll take a look at the upper level pattern. So we see that trough just off the screen, the short wave off to the west, with a big ridge over the wet, or short wave trough in the east, with ridging the west. That trough is gonna move into it's gonna eject into California probably sometime tomorrow night. Tomorrow night. We've seen some decent rainfall out of it actually. You can go see how much rains. And areas could be seeing half an inch, maybe even an inch or 2, inch and a half. So that's pretty decent rainfall. I don't think it's not enough really to for drought to bust this drought, but definitely some good rainfall. That's gonna pretty much linger throughout day 3, and probably come to an end then. But anyways, take a look at the NAM. Pretty strong shortwave right there, and pretty strong defluence aloft. You can see a tiny bit of those vectors going apart from each other directionally, and then we see the main short wave trough digging or heading out for the north, and I think we'll just go to 0Z on Wednesday. So I think really we'll be seeing a decent threat over. As at 500 millibars, we're seeing some around 75 knots over much of Oklahoma. I think the event will be pretty much underway then, and let's take a look at moisture return. 60s, tiny bit along the coast, bit Maybe a bit more moist compared to those soundings, but yeah, by tomorrow, not really much progression of as we see a lot of really Arctic air over much of the north. So that's gonna. And then once we have that trough, we have that dry line, and then boom, probably by 0 to 8, we'll be seeing, I think, more of a favorable setup for, I'll take a sounding along the dry line. And time of some inversion, I think given large scale set, I think the cap will be eroded by 0Z, and there'll be probably some supercells, decent wind profiles, although time at week sharing around 700 millibars could be an inhibiting factor. We can see a time of a kink in the photograph right there. But I think that could be inhibiting on the tornado threat. Time of some pretty limited instability, but I think it's gonna be more closest to around 1,000 joules per kilogram of Mickler Cape. I think it's gonna be let's take another sounding. Time it further north into along the dry line near. Then we'll probably take a few out in the open warm sector. So this one is a bit further north in into Kansas, and time of inversion, I don't think there'll be much. Still, given there'll be large scale scent that's gonna erode the cap, and we'll be seeing some initiation along the dry line, and pretty decent 3 Cape around 117 joules per kilogram, with a pretty fat Cape around lofting from 700 millibars up into the equilibrium level. So I think the lower dynamics think in the low levels could be a time of a struggle, but don't see much of an issue apart from that. So this one's a bit further south of the surface low. Really same story. Definitely see time of some lacking of 700 millibar shear. Don't think it'll be too much of an inhibiting factor. We'll be seeing some pretty I think there'll be still a tornado threat with that. I think it's gonna be within supercells that can really sustain it. Then these two are out in the open warm sector. This one is capped off, and this one's also capped off. And either way, you can see a time of multiple kinks in the photograph right there, and I think the cap is a bit overdone at this point, but since the NAM really tries to really shows more of a cap than reality will be. So let's take a look at 700 millibar temperature actually. So let's fast forward to around Tuesday night. We're seeing temperatures 700 millibars probably around 5 degrees, 6 degrees. Much in Oklahoma, a bit warm, hanging near the dry line. It's below freezing, so I think along the dry line will be good. And out in the open warm sector, I think I'll be waiting for the cam to see to resolve how much inversion there'll be. I think that's gonna be the choice that will be needed. Take a look at the low level jet blossoming overnight around 0Z, around 50 to 60 knots. Strong little shear, blossoming even more further south. Strong warm air advection, and overnight we'll be seeing a low level jet cranking by Wednesday morning around 70 knots. Just ahead probably will be a quasi-linear convective system. I think will be also the evolution of that QLCS will be really vital, really, to what the setup as. Will the warm sector get washed out, or will we be seeing some supercells initiate if it doesn't wash out, and we can, or there is a decent opportunity for some prefrontal supercells, but yeah, we'll have to wait a day or two, maybe more than that, to wait to see how that pans out. But anyways, take a look at the GFS, and basically initiating like the NAM trough, pretty close trough moves in, ejects into California sometime tomorrow night, moving into Kansas, and exit region reaching Oklahoma, Kansas, and Missouri and Iowa. And then once we get into Wednesday, I think we'll have to keep an eye on 500 millibar flow, because if we get more meridional, I think that will be favoring upscale growth. QLCS mode, as when 500 millibar shear is out of the south to north, that's where where the precipitation of a supercell gets fanned out and interferes into other updrafts, which causes for upscale growth. Meanwhile, if it's more westerly, there won't be an issue really about that, unless. So I think I can really anticipate if there's supercells, it will be probably more of a messy mode. If there is a QLCS pre-funnel, I think out ahead of it will be messy. It will be messy, I think, nearly no matter what right now, although still a few days for this to change, and we'll watch how this goes. And then, but I think there will be still quite a severe threat going into. Then on Thursday, shortwave trough moves up into I think it'll be more of a morning threat, as we'll look at moisture return action now. Again, not much, as that Arctic front continues to basically intrude into the northeast, but 60s reaching up. I think it's a bit again, and then 60s reaching up until southern Illinois, Indiana. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see how this. And then on Thursday, I think maybe we can see, since here weather further up to the north, we can see a few soundings from the northeast. Pretty straight hodograph right there. Not too much going in the way of that. Time of a kink as well, but I think Wednesday right now pretty much primary concern, although I wouldn't really sleep on Tuesday or Thursday. I think both of those still need pretty adequate amount of attention, as there could potentially be a threat with those 4 tornadoes. I think day 4 might be a good one to see some good dry line supercells, and then day 6 maybe that linear mode, and we'll be seeing maybe a few more supercells Um, but yeah, take a look at our ensembles real quick. Actually, first we'll take a look at the GFS ensembles real quick. I think we're gonna mostly take a look at, and then we'll take a look at the short range ensemble forecast, and then we'll take a look at the euro. This is gonna be mostly, we're gonna take a look mostly at 500 millibar winds. We'll be seeing really the upper level pattern, see how it evolves. So no shock, trough a tiny bit moving in, ejecting into California, into the four corners tomorrow night, and then pretty southwesterly flow over much of around 70 knots. I think it'll be some. I think it was a pretty decent setup. So, and then take a look at that. Thursday, time is southwesterly, flow over much of over Alabama, and then 18Z also southwesterly. So let's take a look at the strength of the surface flow as well. And then we get least cyclogenesis, 991 millibar low, surface low, and 986 is a mean on around Wednesday evening. We'll be seeing, and that tracks off to the north, and we'll be 989 and 12Z and 0Z. I think that surface flow will be much for northern Illinois, southern Wisconsin, around 9 in the mid 980s. So it's quite a potent surface flow that will be ejecting northeastward. Let's take a look at the Euro shows, and then we'll take a look at the short range ensemble forecast, see how it's doing. So let's take a look at 0Z on 18Z. The cyclogenesis surface because it's underway. 990 millibar low around 18Z. Take a look at around 0Z. And 988 millibars, and it seems like track seems to be a tiny bit more in agreement. We have a tiny bit. We have two really surface lows. One, we have two surface lows, both in the 990s. One over Oklahoma, and another one over Iowa, and then I think both of them really become one surface low, and then it was surface low of 987 millibars over central and northern Illinois. So I think, did the GFS show actually two of them, one of them over southern Oklahoma. Don't think it did. Yeah, it didn't. No really members are really banking on that, but I think it's a bit. I think there'll be probably one near Oklahoma and then another one near over in Iowa further north. So let's take a look at the SREF, and we'll see what it shows. And we'll take a look at moisture return too. So surface flow, done loading. Okay. Anyways, right now 990s are around Tuesday, pretty broad, very broad. I think there's quite a spread actually, and really intensity. Well, not really intensity, but really positioning of the surface low. Some of them going to South Dakota, some of them going into Kansas, and a few in between that. So I think those among the didn't really notice any of the other ensembles really have this issue. Then fast forwarding to around 0Z, and 980 millibar low in southern Nebraska on Wednesday around 0Z, and we'll take a look at 12Z. And again, we have a surface low in northwestern. See what happens. 6Z. Not really much movement compared to around 12Z, but time it wanders over Kansas. Not too impression of this surface low. So let's take a look at dew point real quick. And then we'll take a look at probability of we'll take a look at instability values, and then I think we'll probably get out of here. So not too much moisture. Arctic front surging into the northeast. Then once we get more of a return of a southerly flow, we get time for some moisture. Turn dew points reaching the low 50s into Oklahoma, probably around Monday morning. And then once we get to Tuesday, that's where we'll be into more deeper moisture revection around 0Z. 60s reaching up into Kansas. With upper 50s along the dry line. I think they'll be probably low 60s. I think there'll be a tighter gradient. I think the reason why it's not as tight is because maybe there's some disagreement with the positioning of the dry line. And again, once we get more moisture evacuation, then once we get to 12Z, the event will be probably underway by then. So really take a look at 500 millibar. We already looked at that. Actually, no, we didn't. Let's take a look at it anyways. And again, that trough is probably going to eject into strong closed trough sometime tomorrow night. I think it's a bit slower in its progression. So, as usually by tomorrow evening, the trough is already at least the first closed isobar usually reaches the west coast, and then pretty big long wave, pretty broad long wave, high amplitude, and take a look at around 0Z. Southwesterly flow over the warm sector. I think storm is going to be more dominant really for supercells, turning into quasi QLCS, and then again once it closes again, that's where time that we get some more meridional flow as convection grows upscale overnight, and that's really all we can see. I think tomorrow we'll be seeing more into the event, and we'll be seeing all of Wednesday by then. But anyways, really what I can say is that I believe that I think Tuesday it's gonna be mostly a dominant supercell mode at first, going into more of a QLCS mode overnight, and day 5 I think there's a pretty high ceiling for this event, although a QLCS morning convection could really that'll last throughout the day. Evolution is gonna be really key, and whether it washes the warm sector out, it's gonna be pretty important. And once it gets on day 6, I think we'll be seeing a mid-Atlantic threat stretching from South Carolina, heading into Pennsylvania, New Jersey, heading into maybe even New York. So yeah, apart from that's really it. And goodbye.